Ryan, can you tell us why you've decided to sue the CIA under the Freedom of Information Act?
Sure, thank you. So, though the United States intelligence community is long believed to have been involved in Mandela's arrest, there's little specific public information regarding this involvement, and likewise, the U.S. intelligence community is long understood to have routinely played a role providing information to the South African regime regarding the anti-apartheid movement, and yet little specific public information exists about these activities either. Further, despite now being universally hailed as a freedom fighter against gross injustice, Nelson Mandela was designated a terrorist by the United States government and remained on the United States terror watch list until 2008. I wanted to know, what role did the CIA have in Mandela's arrest? Why were they involved at all? Why did the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States understand Nelson Mandela to be a security threat to the United States, such that the United States would not only surveil him, but provide information to the apartheid regime? I want to know what the CIA and the American intelligence community's broader role was in surveilling and suppressing the anti-apartheid movement. And I want to understand how the United States came to designate Mandela a terrorist threat and maintain that designation until 2008, after he had received the Nobel Prize and the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom.
It's interesting that he remained a terrorist threat until 2008. I know we won't have any of the answers until the information is released, but why do you think that he remained on that list until 2008?
I mean, many conservative politicians and pundits in the United States remained openly hostile to Mandela until fairly recently. I mean, many conservatives in the United States considered Mandela a Marxist terrorist. I mean, Mandela was aligned with politics that many on the far right in the United States find to be abhorrent and are very touchy about. I mean, this is Cold War politics, and this is American conservatives privileging their own right-wing Cold War ideologies over democracy and racial justice.
Okay, so we know that you're suing the CIA under the Freedom of Information Act because you didn't receive the information that you requested. Can you take me through that process?
Absolutely. Thanks. So I want to say first that the Freedom of Information Act is one of the most underappreciated elements of the entire American experiment, and really the experiment of any democracy that has a similar open records law. As broken as FOIA is, FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, as broken as FOIA is, the notion that the records of government are the property of the people and all we need to do to get them is to ask for them is radically democratic. FOIA needs to be defended not only against the CIA and others who view transparency as a threat, but strengthened and dramatically expanded. And the viability of democracy itself really depends upon it. The Freedom of Information Act is this amazing law that, though broken in practice, basically says that large portions of information that the government writes down belong to the people, and all we need to do to get it is to ask for it. Some agencies, some government agencies, this works, and it's not an unreasonable process. Maybe the FOIA process with some agencies can be like a protracted business meeting, or maybe trying to get customer service from a faceless corporation. However, when dealing with U.S. intelligence agencies like the CIA or the FBI, FOIA work is a street fight. I mean, unfortunately, these agencies view themselves as above the law. They view themselves as not needing to comply with the Freedom of Information Act, which is federal law. And so we have a situation where the federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies are in routine violation of American federal law. So I submitted a request to the CIA, request for all records on Mandela, and they just ignored me. They didn't respond at all. And the Freedom of Information Act has a statutory time frame within which they have to respond, otherwise they're in violation of the law. Unfortunately, FOIA has very few teeth, and so there are no penalties for an agency violating the law. However, once an agency is in violation of the law, you can sue, and so that's what I've done. I've sued the CIA to compel their compliance with the Freedom of Information Act.
That takes a lot of balls, if I can say, to sue the CIA. What information, I know you've requested these documents, but what do you hope to get from them?
Now, it's very difficult to request records through the Freedom of Information Act on a living person unless you have that person's consent. If I had tried to get the CIA records on Nelson Mandela a year ago, they would have said, no, it's a violation of Mandela's privacy, we can't give them to you. Now, with the very sad passing of Mandela, the CIA can no longer use Mandela's privacy interests as an excuse to not release information about the CIA's gross violations of Mandela's privacy. So now is the first time that we're really able, that anyone is really able to do this, which is part of the timing. I mean, what do I hope to do with the records? When I get the records, I'm going to make them public. I mean, I'm simply trying to make clear, to find out and then to make clear what happened. This is United States history. This is world history. This is the history of social justice. It's critical that we understand how we got to where we are.
Mm-hmm. Your answer to this question obviously will be speculation again, but why do you think there's a reason that it's so hard to get these documents?
I think there are two reasons it's so hard to get these documents, and the first is that the United States intelligence community is deeply allergic to the Freedom of Information Act. Just absolutely view the Freedom of Information Act itself as a threat to national security, at least as far as that act is applied to them. So the FBI, the CIA, these agencies really do everything in their power to prevent the release of any information through the Freedom of Information Act. The FBI is arguing in court, because I'm suing the FBI right now, for their failure to comply with the Freedom of Information Act. The FBI is arguing in court that my dissertation research itself at MIT is a threat to national security. And so these agencies really will do anything to prevent the release of records through the Freedom of Information Act. And so that's the first issue. And then the second issue, these records will likely be explosive. If the records show anything along the lines of what, honestly, of what we expect to see, of what leading CIA operatives have come out and said is the case, that the CIA played a fundamental role in Nelson Mandela's arrest, and that the CIA and NSA have played a role for decades in providing intelligence on the anti-apartheid movement to the apartheid regime. I mean, to the extent that the records show anything along these lines, that could easily be explosive information. These are things that the CIA has flatly denied or refused to speak to ever. So, yeah, in addition to just a tremendous general aversion on the part of the U.S. intelligence community, and honestly, the Obama administration and the Bush administration before, to transparency and open government in general, these records in particular could be especially sensitive.
Ryan, when do you think you'll actually be able to get these records and make them public?
I think this is going to be a tremendous fight to get these records. I think holding the United States government accountable to the Freedom of Information Act now and to its own history as far as Nelson Mandela and the struggle against apartheid is concerned is absolutely essential for moving forward.